Also 13 years ago, on June 25th, 2008, the Ultimate Warrior wrestled the final match of his career in front of 12,000 people against Orlando Jordan for the NWE promotion in Barcelona, Spain. His wife and little warrior daughters were in the crowd to watch him, which may have been the reason he did the match and took the booking. Maybe he wanted his kids to see him wrestle one time. Because I don't believe he had wrestled a match since probably the Halloween Havoc match in '98 with Hulk Hogan, which is better left forgotten. So it had been about a decade since his last match. He was not moving around well. You can find video of the entire thing on YouTube. He was not moving around well. He ran to the ring, and when I say ran, I'm being very generous when I say that. Clearly, he was dealing with knee issues. Honestly, you could even see it years later at the Hall of Fame when he came out on Raw the night before he died. When he would just walk to the ring. He had some kind of knee problem. I don't know if he ever had a knee replacement or what. I don't think we ever got the full story on what the knee problems were, but he was walking real funky. And he got to the ring after his entrance. He was gasping for air. But he worked for 18 minutes. 18 minutes! An 18-minute Ultimate Warrior match in 2008. He was doing moves that he never did in his heyday in WWE. He did a superplex. He did a cross-body off the top rope. He won with a diving shoulder block off the ropes to capture the NWE Championship, which he promptly relinquished before retiring for good. 10 years ago this week, on June 27th, 2011, with his contract expiring the following month and no plans to re-sign with WWE, CM Punk dropped his famous pipe bomb on an episode of Raw Roulette, live from Las Vegas. A promo that I had at number 3 on my list of the top 9 greatest promos in WWE history that I did on the podcast about 5 years ago. A promo that is still relevant today. Stone Cold Steve Austin, who knows a thing or two about iconic promos, was watching, and he tweeted later that night, CM Punk just melted my 52-inch TV, 52 inches, with a scorching hot promo. Delivery, content, and attitude, one of the best promos I've ever seen. Punk was frustrated. WWE had recently disbanded the Straight Edge Society that he was leading on SmackDown. He wasn't doing much of anything on television. Then he got a couple of big wins on TV, including one over John Cena. And he earned himself a WWE Championship match right as WWE was trying to sign him to a new deal. Oh, how convenient. How convenient that his contract was expiring. They wanted him to sign a new one, and WWE all of a sudden took an interest in CM Punk. It's like, oh shit, this guy might leave. We should probably do something with him. But Punk was fed up. He was also fed up that The Rock had already been slotted in for next year's WrestleMania main event when he himself had never been in one. So they acknowledged on TV that his contract was set to expire at midnight on July 17th, and teased that Punk might just win the title at Money in the Bank and leave with it. Now, the main event on this show was a tables match between John Cena and R-Truth. Punk interfered, he cost Cena the match, he grabbed the mic, he walked all the way up to the stage, sat down, and cut a scathing promo on the company that was more of a shoot promo masquerading as a storyline here on this show. A lot of truth in this promo. He talked about being a Paul Heyman guy. Paul Heyman was not in the company at that time. He teased taking the WWE title with him after he wins it to New Japan or maybe even back to Ring of Honor. He gave Colt Cabana a shout out. He called out Vince McMahon's imaginary brass rings that he always dangles in front of talent. He said Vince surrounds himself by douchebag yes men like John Laurinaitis. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And that he would like to think that WWE would be better after Vince McMahon is dead. but it's just going to be taken over by his idiotic daughter and his doofus son-in-law and the rest of his stupid family. Although not if Nick Khan has anything to say about that. And then before he could share a personal story about Vince McMahon and WWE's anti-bullying campaign, which I am still waiting to hear the story. Maybe there was no story. Maybe, he knew where he was going to get cut off, I guess. But before he had the chance to tell us this story, they cut his mic. And with that, Punk talked himself into his first WWE title run and a lucrative new contract. A man who had every intention of walking out would go on to hold that title later on for 434 days. And while things turned out nicely for him and he met his future wife working for the company, a lot of good things happened for CM Punk. It is still baffling how badly they bungled those next 2 or 3 months after he won the title of Money in the Bank. As hot and over as he was at that time, he could have been so much bigger. They rushed him back way too soon. And frankly, it's not just a matter of, I think he could have been bigger. They could have just made this, they could have gotten more creative with this. It could have been even more fun than it was. They rushed him back way too soon, instead of milking him making appearances with the belt in various places. They had Alberto Del Dipshit cash in on him at SummerSlam and win the title. They set up, of all things, a CM Punk-Kevin Nash match out of that. Punk, I think, ended up getting powerbombed on television a bunch of times without ever getting a receipt on Nash because they never did the match. Nash had to pull out because of a medical issue. So Triple H took his place and went on to pin the white-hot CM Punk with the pedigree. I think it took 3 of them, but still. Triple H beat CM Punk. Because of course he did. Then Punk won the title back, and you could probably count on one hand how many pay-per-views he actually headlined as the champion. At least until he turned heel. Things improved on that front once he turned heel. He at least got a few main events before he dropped the belt to The Rock. But despite all of that, he did become a much bigger star out of this. And that really, I think, as much as anything he actually said, any words that he spoke in the promo, that is what makes this one of the greatest promos in WWE history. And 2 years ago this week, on June 27th, 2019, WWE named Paul Heyman as the new executive director of Monday Night Raw, and Eric Bischoff as the new executive director of SmackDown, head of the show's move to Fox later that year in October, with both men reporting directly to Vince McMahon. The moves came in light of weakening ticket sales and television ratings, and at least in part due to AEW securing television with TNT, they were starting to make moves. And that was making people in WWE, I'm sure, a little bit nervous. Investors started to ask questions on some of the conference calls about not just AEW, but the falling ratings. And they saw Bischoff and Heyman as 2 names that people associate with that glory period of pro wrestling. So they decided to install them in positions of power. Bischoff moved his family from Wyoming all the way to Connecticut for the new job. And 4 months later, he was fired and replaced by Bruce Pritchard. Heyman lasted a little bit longer at least. He was fired from the role exactly 1 year later. But they kept him around as an on-air performer. And that is this week, this very busy week in wrestling history.